Today, the Great Pyramid looks like a staircase of weathered stone, but that is not the monument Khufu's builders completed. In the 26th century BCE, its rough core was hidden beneath smooth, pale limestone, its edges were sharp, and it rose above temples, causeways, cemeteries, and a Nile-linked landscape. Yet one famous detail, the gleaming golden summit, has never been proved. So what can this surviving evidence actually restore? Welcome to this explainer, where we're going to peel back the centuries and investigate exactly that.
We're launching a bit of a forensic investigation right now. We want to know, what did the Great Pyramid of Khufu actually look like when it was finally completed? And, just as importantly, where does the hard surviving evidence end and modern imagination begin? We're going to rebuild this monument piece by piece, separating fantasy from historical reality using only what we can prove.
To do that, we have a clear checklist to get through. We'll start by looking at the missing exterior and its pale limestone skin, then talk about the logistics of the builders and the massive Nile-linked complex, before tackling some modern myths, new science, and ultimately landing on the most defensible reconstruction.
So let's start with the most obvious piece of the puzzle, the missing exterior.
You know, we have to acknowledge a kind of funny truth here. The ruin we see today has actually become way more familiar to us than the finished monument ever was. Those stark stepped blocks you see in every photograph, that is just the pyramid's internal structural body. It's a local Giza limestone core that was literally never meant to see the light of day. Evidence like surviving sockets and ancient pavements near the base show us that a second layer originally covered that rough core entirely, creating 4 continuous, completely smooth, sloping planes. And the sheer scale of this thing is mind-blowing. Thanks to meticulous surveys from the 19th and 20th centuries, we know that when the casing was complete, the pyramid had a mean base side of 230.55 meters. That's nearly 756 feet, and an original height of about 146.5 meters. But here is the truly staggering part. This massive square base was aligned within roughly 4 arc minutes of the true cardinal directions. 4 arc minutes. That is a tiny fraction of a single degree. The level of careful observation and correction required to produce a form of that size with edges that read sharply against the sky is just incredible.
Now, what about that smooth outer layer? Let's dive into the pale limestone skin.
We know exactly what this missing surface was made of. Geological studies and surviving fragments confirm that the skin was built using Tura-Maasara fine limestone. This was a really high-quality, pale cream to white stone imported from quarries over on the east bank of the Nile. Under the blazing Egyptian sun, this dressed casing would have been blindingly bright and luminous. Now look, you've probably heard claims that it shone perfectly like a mirror. We got to be careful there. Fine limestone can definitely be smoothed beautifully, but a flawless, literal mirror reflection, that's an unproven exaggeration. Think bright and luminous rather than a literal mirror.
And we actually have physical proof of this exterior. This is the Edinburgh casing stone. It's a surviving fragment of that original fine limestone casing currently sitting in National Museum, Scotland. It weighs a massive 500 kilograms today, and it preserves a super precise face angle, right around 51 degrees and 51 minutes. It's a tangible, real-world anchor, proving the Great Pyramid really was encased in this beautiful, carefully dressed pale stone.
Okay, so how did they actually get all that fine stone there? Let's talk about MERS boats and builders.
In 2013, we got an absolutely incredible piece of the puzzle, an actual ancient diary. Archaeologists working on Egypt's Red Sea coast found the daily logbook of an official named Inspector Mayer, writing right at the end of Khufu's reign. And it's basically a highly detailed shipping log. It specifically records his crew repeatedly moving this fine limestone. They'd quarry it at Tura-Maasara, load it onto boats, navigate through the Nile channels, and deliver it to Akhet-Khufu, which translates to Khufu's horizon, the project name for the Great Pyramid project. No aliens, no secret building machines, just a highly organized, massive transport system recorded directly on papyrus.
And speaking of the people doing the work, we really need to clear something up. Archaeology at massive worker settlements like Hayt el-Gharab completely shatters that persistent Hollywood myth of endless, chained foreign slaves. The reality? We're looking at highly organized, named Egyptian labor crews. We're talking specialized scribes, expert masons, administrators, and citizens fulfilling rotating civic obligations. They were well-fed and provisioned by a huge state system, complete with bakeries and breweries. Now, yes, the Old Kingdom was strictly hierarchical, and the state compelled this labor, but a vast foreign slave gang? The evidence just doesn't support that at all.
So, if we zoom out from the workers, how did this monument fit into its surroundings? Let's look at the Nile-linked sacred complex.
You see, the completed Great Pyramid didn't stand isolated in the sand like it does today. It was simply the focal point of a living, highly engineered sacred landscape. To the east, it physically connected to a mortuary temple. From there, a long processional causeway ran down toward valley-side facilities. The whole thing was framed by enclosure walls, subsidiary pyramids, sprawling elite and royal cemeteries, and buried cedar boat pits that show off some seriously sophisticated naval construction.
And water was literally right at its doorstep. A groundbreaking 2024 paleogeographic study reconstructed an extinct branch of the Nile called the Ahramet branch. It was massive, 64 kilometers long and anywhere from 200 to 700 meters wide, running right alongside the pyramid fields. This means the pyramid was deeply connected to the river system. Its construction and the delivery of Inspector Mears limestone relied entirely on navigable harbor approaches and canals connecting the plateau straight to the bustling Nile waterscape.
Now, as we build this evidence-based picture, we also need to address the missing pieces. That brings us to myths, tops, and new science.
Reconstructing history means being honest about what we just don't know. Take the very top of the pyramid. Based on other Egyptian architecture, a small capstone, or pyramidion, is highly probable, but its exact material and finish, completely unknown. That popular idea of a giant solid gold summit? Sorry, that's an unsupported myth with zero direct evidence. What about the claim that the pyramid was deliberately built with 8 sides? Also unproven. A major 2022 analysis argues that those slight indentations you sometimes see are simply a raking light effect caused by centuries of uneven casing loss and damage to the core. The safest, most historically sound bet is 4 continuous, flat faces.
But while we're stripping away the myths, modern science is actually handing us entirely new mysteries. Take muon radiography, a super cool non-destructive imaging technique that uses cosmic rays to see inside dense structures. In 2017, it detected a massive anomaly inside the pyramid known as the Big Void, measuring at least 30 meters long. Then, in 2023 and 2025, further imaging confirmed a 9-meter hidden corridor behind the north face chevrons. So we have these real, newly detected architectural spaces inside the Great Pyramid, but honestly, their exact functions and how they relate to the building sequence remain a total mystery.
So how did this pristine monument become the jagged ruin we see today? Well, it wasn't one big dramatic cataclysm. Completed in the 26th century BCE, it actually stood intact for millennia. A major earthquake in 1303 CE might have loosened some of the stones, but the real damage was basically human recycling. Over several centuries, later generations gradually removed that valuable fine limestone to build other things. By the time modern surveyors showed up in the 19th century, the pyramid had been completely stripped down to its exposed, weathered core.
Which brings us to our final takeaway: the defensible reconstruction.
When we put all this heavily researched, fact-checked evidence together, what do we get? The most defensible historical reconstruction is arguably more magnificent than the modern fantasies. We have a sharply geometric monument, originally about 146.5 meters high, covered in 4 bright, completely smooth faces of pale, fine limestone. It sits at the very heart of an integrated mortuary temple and causeway set within a busy, engineered landscape deeply linked to the Nile River. We don't need exaggerated claims of literal mirror finishes or massive solid gold capstones to make it impressive. We can appreciate it while preserving the genuine uncertainty about its exact apex material, its perfect sheen, and its precise ancient shoreline.
This evidence-based picture shows us a monument built by the extraordinary organization and labor of an entire society, not by magic. So, I'll leave you with this. Which lost feature changes your picture of the Great Pyramid the most? Is it that pale, smooth casing, the missing summit, or maybe the vanished, bustling river landscape? Thanks for joining us to explore the archaeology behind history's greatest mysteries in the standalone documentary for Dust of Ages.